Welcome to One More Hour, the podcast all about backyard ultras, timed races, and the ultra running mindset of going one more. If you're an ultra runner, a trail or ultra runner curious about the format, or just someone who loves to test your limits, you're in the right place. I'm Jackie Wilson, an ultra marathon and marathon run coach, trail runner, outdoor enthusiast, and backyard ultra expert. On this show, I'll bring you stories, strategies, and conversations with runners, race directors, experts, and more to help you go further, dig deeper, and keep going when everything in you says stop. Thank you so much for joining me for some yards. Let's get started with one more. Welcome back to the show. Today's guest is someone I met on Instagram, and then we got to meet in person at the Elm Creek Backyard Ultra down in the Twin Cities of Minnesota this past April. We are going to dive into backyard ultras, timed races, and their running journey, so I am so excited to introduce her. Please welcome Elizabeth. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Definitely. I'm so excited to chat with you, Jackie.
Awesome.
I've listened to all your episodes, and I'm like, this is the exact podcast that I would have loved to have listened to a couple years ago.
Awesome. Well, I actually thought of it. I was thinking about it like a year ago, and I was like, I just have to do this. So it makes me happy that you've listened to it. I've had lots of good feedback about it and lots of good suggestions and like guest speakers and everything. So I'm excited to just see what is to come of it in the next year. So I really think that it's fun to meet people on Instagram and then meet them in real life. It's the opposite of what we were told growing up, right? Like, don't talk to strangers on the internet. But
exactly,
I think being able to meet in person is so much fun. And I want to come back to this, but you just ran a 12-hour race this past weekend. How are you feeling and how are you recovering?
Yeah, so I ran the Loppet Foundations and Missing Link, they're the race director, Loop It Loppet 12-hour challenge. And there's also a 6-hour, there's also a relay, but I tend to like to choose the longest version of a race when they offer it. And so I ran that race a couple years ago, but anyway, I ran it this year, and my goal was to take as few breaks as possible, because I really kind of lounged around that first year that I ran it. And so I hit 50 miles on my watch, but 49 miles officially. And so that was 2 more 5-mile loops than I had completed a couple years prior. And recovery has gone well. Aside from, and I still need to figure this out, the footwear piece.
Yes.
The shoes feel comfortable overall. Aside from, I cannot figure it out for my big toes, and I'm gonna leave out the details. But that's kind of my biggest issue remaining. But otherwise, it was such a beautiful day. So
Awesome.
I loved it.
Awesome. I wish that I could have gotten down there. I just feel for our area, for Minnesota, for the Dakotas, for Iowa, Wisconsin, there's so many races going on at this time period. It's like, what do you do? Which one do you pick? Which ones do you volunteer for? And which ones do you just say like, hey, I just ran a race, or I'm going to be running a race, I should probably just rest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there were so many that day that a handful of friends that they were doing other races that same day. But the Loppet Foundation, they just put on some great races in addition to Missing Link for that particular one.
Awesome. And so now that you mentioned that your goal was to not spend as much time back at base camp, you ran Javelina last year, and Javelina is going on right now. So
yes.
What did you think of the race environment, like the 20-mile loop of coming back to the same spot? What did you think of that?
I realized I love a loop format. And I realized that after I ran Kettle 100 this summer, and it was not a looped format. It threw me off a little bit in terms of kind of doing these out and backs and not really being familiar with the course. Javelina, it was my first time in Arizona, my first time in the desert. The race was 100 degrees for the most part, and I had done heat training going into it, and a lot of folks had talked about the dry heat, and that was lovely. I mean, being in Minnesota, and we have all the humidity, which I also don't mind. I'm already missing it now that fall is hitting.
Yeah.
But the that dry heat. I loved the 20-mile loop. I feel like it was kind of like the right distance. They had the right number of aid stations along the way. And logistically, it just made it so, I think it made it so much easier for my partner and our buddy to hang out at the base camp, so at the start finish area. And it was like just enough time. Maybe at points it felt a little long, but to look forward to seeing them when I came back through. So, but also it was only, those kind of after each of those 20-mile loops that I would see them. So there wasn't too much of an opportunity to kind of hang out for too long. Mm-hmm. So, in other races where you have multiple stops along the way, it's like, okay, well, that 5, 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes really adds up. That also happened to me at Kettle 100 as well. So, but yeah, I had a little bit of thinking of, seeing Javelina this year, and there's so many people who end up going. So whether it's like last year I met a few, you were saying you meet people from Instagram.
Yeah.
It's like there are podcast hosts that, I started following on Instagram and got to meet them. Or last year, David Roche, he passed me not once but twice on the course. And I was like, this is so cool that this incredible athlete and coach and podcaster, I get to see him twice on this course. So I appreciate that format. Just logistically, it makes it so much easier.
Yeah. And so have you, prior to Javelina last year, you had done timed races, a looped course, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So prior to Javelina, that same year, in June, I had run, it's called Bristow 24, 12, and 6. So it's a 24-hour, 12-hour, 6-hour event. It's a 1-mile loop I think it's Dexter, Oregon, put on by Beyond Running and another incredible race organization. And so I thought, okay, I had just done my first time at the loop at Lapit. That's a 5-mile loop. And now I'm going to move into a 1-mile loop. I'm like, okay, is that going to feel monotonous? But I was in Oregon, and it's beautiful. It's on trail. And every time I talk about that race and I say that it was the 1-mile loop, I have to say, I just felt like a Nintendo character, just like collecting loops. I'm like, okay, I do one. I'm like, well, I could go do another. It's just a mile. And I had gone into that race. It was more of, so there's that race, and there was someone else that I had met via Instagram, and they were connected to someone who I just met at a queer trail running camp that I'd gone to in Washington a few months prior. Anyway, this person, they were doing a pride meetup at the race. And so they had pride flags set up, and we had all these folks who had gone to this queer trail running camp, and I think there were some other connections. And I was like, that sounds super fun. I'm going to mix two of my favorite things, identifying as queer and also running. So this sounds ideal, and we're in the Pacific Northwest. And so I went into that with not necessarily having a goal other than, yes, I'm going to sign up for the 24 versus the 12 or the 6 and just see what I can do. So I ended up doing 67 loops or 67 miles for that race. And I wasn't really necessarily doing ultra training at that point, but when it's a 1-mile loop, you can walk a handful. You just keep going through the night. They were serving up hamburgers and pizza, and like, okay, well, yeah, the hamburger sounds good. Or they're like, oh, it's not ready yet. I'm like, okay, let me just go do another loop and I'll pick it up on my way through. And the person who had organized the Pride meetup, their mom was there. And she's like, what can I get you? And she's like, do you want some coffee? I was like, coffee would be great. She's like, okay, go do another loop and I'll have a cup of coffee ready for you. So, I mean, I don't know if there's a much more approachable way to do a race than kind of having just like so many snacks and food and such an approachable distance to be able to keep moving. Also, you could camp the night before, and my tent was just far enough away that it felt too far away to go and change out of my contacts. I was like, well, I can't sleep now. So that was just another way that you had to keep going.
Yeah. I love that approach and your mindset around that 1-mile loop, because a lot of people I talk to are like, oh my gosh, that would be so monotonous. I would drive myself crazy. I would think that I was running in circles and feel like that. and to switch that mindset to, it's only 1 mile and I can go out and have someone make me some coffee and I can keep moving during that period so that my muscles, I'm still staying warm. I'm not getting tight and I'm not sitting down and then I'm not sore standing back up. So to be able to keep moving, to have that fuel every mile and to know that I can walk a mile. I can keep going. And then maybe after walking a couple miles, you start running again. So I love that perspective of approaching a 1 mile loop with, I can do one more. I can walk. I can grab some fuel, or I can have someone make me some food while I'm out there one more time and feel rejuvenated when you get back. And you look forward to that, right? While you're out there, like, oh, I'm going to have coffee when I get back. So I just love that.
Yeah, and there's definitely that motivation, and you're seeing the same people over and over, and we're continuing to cheer one another on. And I feel like when you're doing kind of maybe the 12-hour or 24-hour amount, there's still a novelty because you're there at a certain time of day. So maybe like this, we start in the morning, and then you're hitting the afternoon and then the evening. So the daylight, like the amount of light is changing. Then it's overnight and you're like, okay, how many people are still going to stay out here? And then you know that some people are kind of sleeping, but you're still just one of the few who are still there. And then you have the sunrise to look forward to. And it was interesting. That was, I think, one of the first races where I realized kind of the mental versus the physical piece of, after maybe about 50 miles or so, I think about 50K, my feet were really starting to hurt. And so then, maybe it's laying on the grass versus sitting in a chair, kind of being just kind of sprawling out, maybe putting my legs up in the air, kind of help with that blood flow. And you get back up and you're like, oh, my feet kind of hurt. But like you said, then you can walk, and then it's like, okay, I'm starting to warm back up, and then you can run. And that really happened in the last, I think, hour or so of the race. One of the other people, he was part of the Pride meetup, and he was thinking about going back out because he's like, I think I could do a couple more loops. And I was like, okay, let's go out together. And we were both kind of slowing down. We were both walking. And then there was the motivation of I think it was that we could at least do maybe 2 more loops. And then we just took off running. I was like, how was it that we felt so terrible, but then now we're buddying up and suddenly we can run and we can do a couple of our fastest loops throughout. It was, it's just this interesting kind of balance between the two. And did we truly start to feel better because we had, emotionally it helps because we just connected with another runner? Was it that some caffeine kicked in, or was it a mix of the two? I'm not sure, but I think there's, that balance between the physical and mental.
Yeah. And I want to touch on it later, but I think that's the same for the backyard, where you kind of start thinking like, oh, maybe this will be my last one. And you go out and in your head, you're like, oh, maybe this is my last one. And it feels better. And they're like, I can do another yard. I can do another one. And I am still trying to figure that out too, of what causes that shift in energy and that shift in mindset of getting back into it, because at one point you thought that you may be done and now you're back to running, and it's like that flip of a switch and it's a totally different day. So I want to back up a little bit. And I want to start with your running journey. When did you find running?
I found running, so as I was thinking about this, it would have been, so since we're in 2025, 25 years ago, which feels so long. Feels so long ago because I don't feel quite that old, but it was in high school. And so I ran cross country in high school, and I had tried basketball and soccer and track, ran sprints in track, even though I was realizing, I was like, oh, I kind of like the idea of running longer, but particularly cross country, we're getting to run on golf courses and just on trail and not being on the track and not being necessarily on road. But I remember in high school, I forgot what year it was, but the first time that I ran for 45 minutes, and we were running around town, and I was with another friend, we were running. I was like, I can't believe we just ran 45 minutes at one time. Of course, from there, the rest is history, but that feeling of being able to do that, because so the races at that time, the girls ran 4K and the boys ran 5K. I think now it has switched that both teams will run, or both divisions can run the 5K. But I loved cross country so much. I think our coach was great, and we had just, it was just fun. It was something to look forward to, and something about it resonated with me. Maybe it's because I didn't have to memorize plays. I didn't have to have any sort of fancy footwork. It just was, you just run. And there are, of course, we have an entire podcast in which to talk about running. So of course there's so many components to it, but at the most basic level is simply you are just moving yourself forward. Sometimes as quickly as you can, but sometimes it's just simply because you want to keep moving forward for a particular time.
And when did you get into ultra running?
So I ran my first marathon. I ran the Twin Cities Marathon in 2009. So that was another one. In 2009, I also ran my first half marathon. And going into that half marathon, I thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to run 13 miles? And I did it, and it was so fun. I was like, well, I did it. I trained for it. I made it happen. And then I thought, okay, maybe a marathon is in my future, and did the training for that. Just running loops around the chain of lakes in Minneapolis, and got really good at pacing, of like understanding of like, here's what it feels like to run a 10-minute pace. Because at that time I didn't have a GPS watch. Had just kind of a basic smartwatch, and I think I had maybe driven, or some routes driving them, but also I think they had it posted online of like what the pedestrian paths were around there. So I ran Twin Cities Marathon in 2009, and then just kind of kept running, maybe doing 5Ks and 10Ks. A few years later, ran my first trail race, and ran the Fargo Marathon and the Twin Cities Marathon again, and PR'd. Still remains, that was probably 12 years ago, PR'd my marathon, and just kept kind of doing that. Well, then probably about 2015, I was starting to feel overuse injury. I wasn't balancing in mobility or strength training, and was just running. And I was like, oh, this kind of hurts, and was, still running. For better or worse, what I realized is if I ran slower, it didn't really matter what the distance was. It didn't hurt more. So that was my solution, was, well, I can just run further and keep the pace relatively slow, and I'm good to go. Of course, that only lasted so long. But mixed with that, I also had decided, so I was 29, and I was at work one day, and I thought, you know what I should do for my 30th birthday? I should run 30 miles. One of the best birthdays ever. Again, we live in the Midwest. My birthday's in January. I lucked out that I think it was just above freezing on that day. My parents came out for it. My brother was here. My partner biked basically the whole distance, and I ran the same chain of lakes that I had practiced on so many years before. And I had so many different friends who came out. They handed me snacks. They ran with me, and just did multiple loops around those lakes to complete my 30 miles and for my ultra birthday. And that was my introduction to ultra running, was running on the roads. But then a few months later, I ran the Zumbro 50 miler in Minnesota. And I knew what I was doing to the extent of like, I knew I needed to run regularly. But I hadn't run overnight before. I hadn't really done a lot of trail running, and I wasn't really familiar with doing a lot of running, like basically doing like hills and things. So that one, it was a bit of a slog, and it was really cold. It was a midnight start, but I don't know. I had a headlamp. I had done some training. I had run 30 miles a couple months prior, and my partner was there, and to meet me at, because that's another looped course. There's the start of the loops, and it was, I finished it. So it was, yeah, nearly 10 years ago was my first ultra.
And what has ultra running meant for you in these past 10 years? How has it evolved? What role maybe in your daily life has it played or helped? Because I think it's neat to see how ultra running evolves as you move through different seasons of life.
Running in general has just been such an integral part of my life. When I was, had mentioned that I ran the Twin Cities Marathon for the first time. At that point, I was new to Minnesota, and I was starting to explore coming out as gay. And my mom was going to come and watch me run this marathon. I was like, okay, and now she's going to meet all of my new queer friends. I should probably come out. So running, again, played a part in that. And kind of similarly in terms of like at work, I'm known as the runner, the one who likes to go and run all of these kind of silly or these long distances. And I love having that identity. I love that at work, for a couple of years, we had this run at work day, 5K that we would do over our lunch break when I was a state employee years ago. And so I helped to organize that race, and I was on that committee, and I got to teach these presentations about kind of learning to run and things to consider. So like there's the teaching component, there's the actual running component, and just there's something about it that has resonated so much. But thinking about ultra running, reading about kind of all these adventures that runners go on, and going on Instagram and seeing races that people are doing, listening to podcasts, and just creating my own long list of, okay, that race sounds fun and this race sounds fun, kind of the next shiny object, but also not trying to fall too much into that, because that, we have to kind of be smart about what we can accomplish in a year over a few years. So trying to be strategic about that. But after I did Zumbro, I ran my first Winter Ultra. So a friend had mentioned about this Tuscobia Winter Ultra in Wisconsin, where you could do... this one I did choose the shorter, quote unquote. It was the 80-mile version instead of this 160.
80 was shorter.
Yeah, the 80 was the shortest, was the short option. And you could either run, bike, or ski. So of course I've chose the run option, and that one is like, okay, how do we prepare for this? So my partner joined in on that race too. And as someone who doesn't identify as a runner, they completed 45 miles of that race. But anyway, there were a group of us who signed up for this race, and we did all the training for it. And by the middle of the race, so it never was over 0 degrees. It was always well below freezing. Carrying this sled, a handful of the folks that I had started with, they had dropped out of the race. And, this is kind of where that mindset piece comes in of like, but I signed up for 80 miles. And, toward maybe the last several miles, my foot hurts a lot and my ankle kind of hurts, but I don't think I'm doing damage here. So I'm just going to keep going. Yeah, it's really cold and I'm tired, and I'm just kind of walking at this point because it's a winter ultra. And, but it was just, that's what I signed up for. So I'm just going to keep going, and this appreciation for getting to be out there and just to be able to do this, I think is what has carried me through a lot of ultras of, I get to do this. This is an adventure. What am I capable of? And can I complete the distance that I've said that I'm going to do? And just kind of building up from there, not necessarily, I feel like lately over the past couple of years, folks, and it's impressive of, they're kind of doing, it's like couch to like 50K or something. Whereas before it was like couch to 5K. And now folks are really kind of progressing so quickly. It took me up until last year to do my first 100. I had, ran a marathon in 2009, and then was like just kind of slowly building up and trying out different race formats and different races. But I don't know, ultra running, it feels epic, but also it feels so, it's I guess kind of it's epic to kind of in the scheme of things, of kind of for your own life, but maybe in contrast to other things. But it's, I just come back to, it's something that really resonated with me, and it's fun, it's challenging, it's approachable, to the extent, again, it's just one foot in front of the other with some of those logistics mixed in, but it's just it's fun. That's what it comes back to. I don't think I would do it if there wasn't that fun component to it.
Yeah. Well, and it's this adventure, but it's also, and epic, like you mentioned, but it's also chill and relaxed. It's not, let's see how fast we can push and
exactly,
and really run that red line of a half marathon, or just hitting mile 20 and realizing you still have a 10K left to push as hard as you can in the marathon. Like, you can walk, you can hike, you can take a little break here, you can sit down, you can sleep. There's so many different things in an ultra that it makes it very approachable. And I just think there's so much beauty behind that, and you can really make of it what you need right now. And you mentioned that 80 miles. So there's a couple of things here. There's Zumbro, looped course, starting at midnight, hilly. There's this 80-mile ultra winter race where you signed up for the 80 and you had that mindset of, yes, my feet hurt, my ankle hurts, but I don't think I'm doing any damage. And I signed up for the 80, so I'm going to go the 80. So when you're approaching backyard ultras, timed races versus a fixed race, like, what are your thoughts in that? Because in a backyard ultra, you don't know how far you're going to go, right? Because there is that thought of, as you mentioned, what am I capable of? How far can I go? So we met at Elm Creek Backyard Ultra this April. What was your approach going into that in terms of how far or how long you wanted to run?
So my approach in kind of just addressing how am I going to do an ultra, whether it's fixed or it's a particular distance or a timed event, or in this case the backyard ultra, is it's like, I'll read as much as I can. So looking up the race recaps, watching videos on YouTube, looking up particular races in podcasts, and just learning as much as I can and hearing people talk about these races. And so in thinking about the backyard ultra, what I heard over and over again is, don't go in with a set distance, which the backyard ultra can be. Oh yes, exactly.
That's what I say too.
Yes, absolutely. It can be a great opportunity to run maybe your first ultra distance, to run your PR distance. But if I think to be, true to the backyard ultra format, or what the possibilities are with it, is you could go further than you ever expected of yourself. And I feel like the format helps propel you to do that because there's not that endpoint. And you have whistles telling you what you need to go and do, which that was the part that I found challenging, moving from having done two fixed time events versus the backyard ultra. For those timed events, you can choose how much you're going to rest or not rest. You can choose how long a loop is going to take you. Whereas for the backyard ultra, you are on a strict schedule. And so fortunately, I had just learned as much as I could about the format, had done a lot of prep and thinking about, nutrition and what gear I wanted. And from a mindset perspective of, I didn't really know what I could do. Honestly, I was kind of doing kind of worrying twice of, what if I don't even finish the first loop? Because I was thinking about how, well, it's, you have an hour. I know I can run 4 miles in 40 minutes on any given day, but how many times can I do that? I wasn't necessarily practicing the format in my training leading up to it. I just relied on typical ultra marathon training, and also in kind of researching it, knowing that running as fast as I could was not going to be the route to go. That was only going to that would only last me a couple loops before I was going to wear myself out. So, and it was funny talking with people who maybe aren't necessarily runners, and they're like, oh yeah, so that would make sense. You just run as fast as you can, so then you can rest. So he was like, I can see why you would say that, but I know in my case, and maybe for some others, that is probably not the route to go. And so, again, in kind of thinking about, how far can I go? I'm like, well, I would love, I went in without a distance goal, but I was like, I would love to make it through the first loop. I'd love to complete an ultra distance, and then let's see what happens. I did have another goal going in, or I guess kind of the mindset was, I'm not going to stop at the start finish. I will time out. That's how my race will end. And so going into the race, another thing that was a little bit different for me, usually when I sign up for a race, I love the novelty of not knowing what the course is. Like, I might read about it. I'll read the race website, but I won't necessarily go and check out the course ahead of time. In this case, I'm so happy that I did take up the race director's offer to go and check out the course, because that just helped. That was one less thing on my mind of the unknown, because the format was so unknown to me. So that was really helpful from a preparation standpoint. So I think I did 2 of their group runs, which was so helpful. And I think once the race started...
I think that's so valuable for a first timer. If you live near the course and there is a group run offering, or if you know someone else who is training, or at least you know the course, to run/walk it. But I do think it's helpful to be with others, especially if you haven't done the backyard format, so that you can kind of understand the run walk strategy. If it's a flat course, if there are hills, I think it's easier when there are hills. It's more intuitive on when to walk, when to run. But I think it is very valuable for first timers just to kind of understand what others are doing out there. Because I remember my first backyard, and yes, I understood ultra running and what there is to it, but because that course that I ran for my first backyard was so hilly, I thought it was incredible. Everyone stuck together. There were 30 of us or so running, and we walked every hill together. We ran down every hill together, and I thought that just environment was very cool. So I definitely recommend that for everyone, to just see what it's like if there's that opportunity.
Exactly. And you might even, can meet somebody that then on race day, you're like, oh, now I have a familiar face. Or in my case, I was like, well, I know somebody on Instagram, and it was so neat to see you that day, and to, put a real face to the name from our interactions on Instagram. But yeah, for that backyard ultra format, I mean, kind of similar to what I had mentioned for Bristow, of just having this appreciation and curiosity of kind of staying in that present moment, but also thinking about, like, okay, I'm running during the day, and now it would be great to make it to the evening. Okay, now it's evening. It would be, I would like to keep running overnight. I don't want to have to go back to my crew area, to my tent setup, and just kind of sleep there while everyone is still out there running. So I should just keep going. And then overnight, I'm like, okay, well, I want to get to 2 a.m. And okay, well, now what about 4 a.m.? And thinking ahead to the sunrise. And what I haven't quite figured out for myself at Elm Creek is eventually when I did stop, and it was in the midst of a loop, I technically timed out. But was it because I felt satisfied with the distance I had gone, or was it truly I could not run another step? But I eventually made it into, there was another, a guy who was talking. He's like, "Oh, we're on the leaderboard. We're down to the final 20 people." I didn't know there was a leaderboard, but they had a physical board, the little magnet next to our names. I'm like, "Oh, this is so cool." And I feel like accomplishing that, I made it through the night. I got to see the sunrise, which was amazing, and the fog over the pond and hearing the frogs. And part of me feels like from a mindset perspective that maybe I kind of felt like I've accomplished what I needed to. And so a couple of friends actually had shown up that morning, and on my 20th yard, I thought maybe I will, I think that's it. I don't think I can do another one. And they were there, and I was chatting with them, and I said, "You know what? I'm going to go do another one. I can make it. I'm here. And I can be back in the starting corral." But for that 21st yard, I think I started running a bit, and then I just eased into a walk and just kind of kept at that walk. And at that point, I knew I'm not going to make it back in time. So I'll just keep walking the rest of this. I can't run. I don't know if that was really the case, or if, again, I just kind of felt satisfied at that point. With that said, I mean, 83 miles at that point, it was kind of the beginning-ish of my season. I had gone into the race thinking that this Backyard Ultra was kind of a stepping stone to what my goal of the year was. A couple months later was to run Kettle 100. And ultimately, that actually kind of shifted. I think Elm Creek ended up being my A race. And then I was like, "Oh, right, I still have 100 to run in a couple months." But that race, the Backyard Ultra, I'm signed up for Elm Creek again next year. And
Awesome.
there are a handful of things that I think I could improve upon to feel more ready to keep going for that format.
Do you mind sharing some of those?
Yeah, I will completely skip the crew area. That was a lot of what I had looked up on YouTube. I spent so much time packing up all this gear, went on Facebook Marketplace and got a couple of those anti-gravity chairs that are so comfortable that I saw all these people at kind of those bigger Backyard Ultra races that they had. I had this beautiful setup that my partner helped me do. I never saw that again. I never saw it again. I didn't even help clean up at the end. Because when one of the perks of having done the preview runs is the race director had mentioned there would be a community tent. So you could set up a chair and have, a small bag of stuff in there. I was like, okay, I like the sounds of that. That might be a good option. So the day of the race, when we went to go set up, I put a chair in there and a bin of stuff. That is where I went back to after every yard. I was like, I don't have the time to walk an extra, what was it, maybe 30, 45 seconds to get to my tent. But that's a minute, 2 minutes. I only had 7 to 8 minutes between each loop.
Yep.
And so I think I didn't need that space to sprawl out. And I didn't have a crew. My partner helped me set up. They showed up I think they came back Friday night with our dog, and they were a huge help because I was like, there's a couple more things I need from that crew area. If you could put that in the community tent for me, then I'll be good to go overnight, like some layers. But aside from that, I didn't have a crew. And so it just was easier logistically. So I wouldn't do that. So then I would just kind of hone in on some of the essentials. I brought a can of kind of like the really good ginger beer. I had pickle juice shots, and I had my own jug of water. And that was one less thing I had to walk even a few more steps to the aid station. I was like, I can just sit down, fill my bottles, put in my tailwind, and I'm good to go. So keeping everything as simple and consolidated as possible. I got to figure out what to do with my big toes and my shoes. Um, I don't know if it involves cutting off the front of my shoes. There's something, and I've tried wider toe boxes. I've tried increased sizes, so I've got to figure that piece out.
Have you tried lacing, different lacing techniques?
I think that might be of really making sure that my heel is secure so that my foot isn't sliding. Because that has gotten me. It's the up and down, and I think my foot is hitting maybe the front of the shoe, and I think like maybe the top of the shoe too. But I don't know. That's one of those things where I'm like, well, I'm just gonna push through this and deal with the aftermath another day.
Yeah.
During the race, it's fine. And another piece that was different for the Backyard Ultra format. So I don't usually listen to music or podcasts in races. I've started doing it more in training runs, but in races I don't do that. I thought, well, the Backyard Ultra, again, it's new to me. So I spun up a playlist, put a link to it in my Instagram story, and asked friends to add music to it, to add
Awesome.
songs. So then that was something to really look forward to overnight. Put on my Shocks headphones. I can still hear my surroundings. And just it was like, it was so fun to be like, what song is going to come on next? And there were some really goofy ones on there that just made me smile and helped get me through some of the overnight hours too. So I would keep that part of it. And I'm trying to think, I don't think there was anything else too much. I would probably eat a little bit more. I really focused on, I had Tailwind, I had gels, maybe do a little more caffeine, and maybe have a little bit more hot food throughout the night too.
Were you, so I loved Elm Creek's setup. I think they do an incredible job with just their athlete village, their aid station, their menu of what they're going to be serving. Did you take advantage of some of those hot foods?
Yeah, I think they had, and it was a suggestion that they had maybe on the kind of the race briefing call, or one of the prep calls. Somebody said, "How about pierogies?" And they stocked up on those. I had some mashed potatoes, and I think I probably had broth once or twice too. That's one of my favorites. I had that at Javelina, which overnight it was cold, but just like the noodles and broth, it's
Yes.
just it always hits right.
So I love that you set up in that athlete crew tent because they had it on both sides, correct? Where you could set
Yeah,
up.
they were on both sides. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was, I loved seeing that. And that's definitely something that I will take advantage of in the future because I just love being right there. I always like camp the night before, or I try to if it's available. So I always have my tent set up, but I don't need all that stuff. And I always bring way too much stuff because I just want to have everything with me, right? Because you don't always know what you are going to want. But I think setting up right there is extremely valuable. You're taking less time to walk to your tent, walk around. The race aid station is right there. The bathrooms weren't very far away. So I think I love that you set up there and that's your plan for next time too.
Yeah,
Will
exactly.
you have a crew next year?
I don't think so. I went into Elm Creek again. It wasn't my A race, so my partner and I will have been together for 15 years this upcoming January, and they have been at every one of my races, and I've run a lot of races. They've been in the extreme cold. They've been in the extreme heat. They've always been there. I was like, you could take a break on this one. It is not my main race of the year. I don't know what's going to happen. Thanks for helping me set up my crew space or set up my tent that I didn't end up using. And I'll just go from there. And I think that worked out fine. Again, because I would better pack for that one spot. I think I would be set. I also really enjoyed, so appreciative of friends that came out to cheer me on for a couple of loops on Friday and then also on Saturday. But another challenge of the Backyard Ultra is because you don't have much time, and I can get a bit chatty for when I see people that I know. I was like, oh, but I don't have enough time to truly chat with you. But I think it was worth it because they knew what the format was, and they knew I was like, well, of course you have to go and run.
Yeah.
But it felt like this kind of tug to kind of chat with them, but making sure I was doing what I needed to. But I think we found a good balance. But that's another thing with the Backyard Ultra format. Again, you have that limited time frame. Sometimes people be like, "What do you think about when you're running?" Like in a Backyard Ultra, like, what do I need to do in my 5 minutes that I have when I get back? I'm like, do I go to the bathroom? Do I change my shoes? Do I eat food? Do I fill up my water bottles, or do I sit? Because I'll probably have time for two of those things. And so it was really a lesson in prioritization. And I think having done one, I'll have a better idea of what those priorities should be the next time around.
Yeah, priorities are definitely important. And I want to ask this. Are you doing a mental check like 5 minutes before you come back into the corral area, or are you noticing things as they happen while you're out on that loop? And how are you remembering, like, okay, these are my two priorities?
While I am out on the loop and running, and so I think the main things to make sure that I can keep going is, am I hydrating? Am I getting in calories? Do I have enough electrolytes, essentially? I think those are the main priorities. And also, do I have to go to the bathroom? I feel like those are and as much as like wanting to sit down or put my feet up, that is a lower priority. Or even like changing my shoes or my socks, lower priority. And so I think when I was out on the loop and how do I remember, I would just repeat. And it was just like the simplest terms of like, okay, tailwind socks, and just saying that over and over again to myself is what I was doing toward the end of a loop, and kind of repeating that when I would get back into the crew space. And I was feeling tired. I don't think I was feeling like I wasn't hallucinating or feeling particularly out of it. But again, it was just reminding myself, because obviously I'm exerting myself for hours and hours. So making sure that I didn't forget what I needed to do. So a lot of repetition to myself, a lot of talking to myself. I don't know if you do this in a race, but sometimes I even kind of talk to myself out loud.
Yes.
I did this at Javelina. I had my phone and I had headphones, and I never listened to music. It felt like it was just going to be, at that point, kind of another logistic to have to deal with. I was like, oh, but what if my phone dies? And I'm kind of just enjoying being within the race, and I don't want the music. But then I'd be like, well, I'm just going to talk to myself. And truly, it's just like talking out loud.
I talk to myself because sometimes the thoughts that typically I don't talk out loud to myself, but I need to make it real, and I need to make sure that I'm present. So that's when I'm like, okay, Jackie, like snap out of it, or like, this is what we need to focus on. And I talk to myself out loud so that it's like I'm talking to someone else and we're having a conversation, to make sure that I understand that it's just not these thoughts going through my head.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
And I love that you repeated nutrition, socks, or whatever it is, because I've done the same, and I've heard other runners take a similar approach to actually remember what you need to do. But there are times where like I am repeating them in my head, and it's kind of like a meditative state, or I don't know, like when you're trying to get your mind off something and you're counting, and all of a sudden you're just done counting, you're done repeating it, because you're back in the present moment. And sometimes that happens to me where I just completely forget what I'm doing, and I get back to camp and I start the next yard, and it's like I was supposed to grab chapstick or whatever it is. So I think also repeating those out loud would be really valuable.
Oh, the chapstick piece. So when I did the Loop It Lop It last weekend, I did not remember to tell myself to grab that chapstick, and I would go out for another 5-mile loop. I'm like, shoot, I forgot the chapstick.
Yeah.
But at least I got in my tailwind, and I have water, and I ate some food, so that's the priority. But yeah, I should have just had the chapstick in my vest.
That's one thing that
nice.
I always keep on my vest now, but I didn't have I just had my handheld. I was alternating, and it was a super windy day, and once you get on that wind and you're licking your lips, it's like, oh, I need chapstick. And then you get back, and I just forgot to grab my vest again.
Mm-hmm. That is something I really appreciated, and I wasn't sure going into the backyard. Like, okay, it's 4.1 mile, 4.167 miles. do I need to wear a vest, or is this an opportunity to not have to do that? And for Elm Creek, it worked beautifully to have the handheld. I had shorts with some pockets, and that worked out. And that worked out really well. For the Loop It Lop It, I did wear a vest. I don't know, an extra mile. And so now we're getting closer to maybe an hour per loop. And it meant less time going back to my crew area, which was super close to the start finish, even closer than at Elm Creek, which is already relatively close. But it just helped to encourage me of like, okay, I've got one Tailwind bottle, I've got one water bottle, I've got a handful of gels, so I could go and do a couple of loops at a time versus having to stop. But that's kind of nice about, again, these fixed time or a backyard ultra, is you might have that option to not have to carry so much at one time, which I feel like also makes that format more approachable for a first timer.
Yeah, and it adds up, right? If you're out there for, I would say after 12 hours and you're wearing a vest, you start to feel that in your back, in your neck. And if you can not wear it for a while, I think that's really valuable. And it depends on what your needs are and what the weather is like, but if you can alternate or if you can just carry a handheld for a while, I definitely think that lessens the effort load and the perceived exertion level as you continue to run hour after hour after hour.
Definitely.
How do you approach timed races differently than a backyard now that you've done both? And did running a backyard before doing your most recent, Loop It, Lop It? I always get it mixed up.
Yeah, I know. The spellings are so similar. Also, is it Lop It or Lope It? I think I Googled it, and I think it's correct to say it both ways, so I just switch it back and forth. Okay. But anyway,
you always have to think about it. Yeah. So, did running a backyard help you in terms of figuring out pacing and what you wanted to do for this past weekend for when you went 12 hours?
Yes, absolutely. It was amazing for thinking back to the Backyard Ultra, and a few months prior is when I had done Javelina, and thinking about what my pace was for Javelina versus the Backyard Ultra, and it was, I am capable of running these loops a little faster than what I ended up doing. Now, of course, the temperature was completely different, and just approaching that distance was different, and there are those factors. But that Backyard Ultra is almost like a metronome of, it keeps you honest to what you what you could be capable of in terms of what that pacing could be, how far you can get in an hour, how much you can prepare yourself for another 4 miles in just a few minutes. And so going into that Loop It Lop It, into the 12-hour event, knowing that, like, okay, thinking about what my goal would be. Well, I want to do more than what I did 2 years ago. I've run a lot more since then. I've run more ultras since then. And I'm healthy. So it feels logical that I could go further. And like I said, I had spent a lot of time just kind of relaxing, chatting with friends. My partner had come and brought our dog for that one 2 years ago. I'm like, okay, I'll just do less of that. And just keep moving. And thinking about, like, what is it? Forward is a pace? I don't know what the phrasing is, but basically you just keep moving, because even walking is going to get you further than standing still or sitting down. And so that was my goal, aside in the way that I was going to complete more loops and to go further. And a common sense was, well, I have to move more. And I felt like that the Backyard Ultra kind of taught me from the pacing wise of what I was capable of. And also that push to, you have to keep going. Yes, there's going to be a little bit of rest, but otherwise, generally speaking, you're almost constantly on the move. And that's how I approached the 12-hour event. With that said, I knew people. The other thing for the Loop It Lop It is, like, there were people that I had met a couple years ago. There were people that I've met at group runs, and just the camaraderie during the race. Again, with the looped format, is you're seeing the same people over and over again. We're cheering each other on. for the first few hours vocally, for the last few hours more of a thumbs up, but it's still happening. Or you encounter someone and maybe you're just kind of walking together, getting to know each other, and then it's like, okay, well, you enjoy your day, I'm gonna go take off, and I'm sure we're gonna see each other again. And I had some friends who came for the last couple hours of the race. And so there was a choice I had to make so I saw them when I came in from one of my loops, maybe my second to last one. And I was like, well, I've surpassed my goal. Do I just call it and just hang out with them and just chat and not worry about getting in another 5 mile loop? Because for the last 2 hours of the race, you have the option to go to a 1 mile loop. And for the final hour of the race, you have to switch to the 1 mile. And I was thinking about it. I was like, I could do another 5 mile loop. And I was like, but my friends are here. And I was like, you know what? But I'm here for this race, so I'm just going to go do another one. And thinking back again to the mental versus physical, the couple loops prior to that, I was well over an hour for each of those loops. I did that last loop in an hour. I think it was even just under an hour. I was like, I'm going to get back because my friends are still going to be there. I think their kids are going to last that long that they can hang out. So if I just hustle, I even said that to someone on the course because they're like, oh, you're doing a good job. I was like, oh, my friends are waiting for me. I got to get back to them. And they said, oh, that's a really good motivation. And so there's the component of, for that backyard ultra, of, the timing part of it, but also just kind of that community aspect too. I am someone, I love to run by myself. I primarily train by myself. I have also joined a couple of running groups in the past couple years that I love. I look forward to running with them. We've done races together. Some members, they did their first marathon this year, and we had a group to cheer them on. And then you see the same thing at these races. And again, that backyard ultra format and the time event format is such a great opportunity to kind of have that community feel as well.
And there are so many people to talk to, right? So Elm Creek, I feel like there were 200-ish runners. So it's a large group, but you can always find someone to talk to. And I feel like until it got dark, everyone was pretty chatty. And then you get into those first hour, maybe that first hour of darkness, people are still chatty, but then it gets a little quiet. And then you start finding people to talk to get your mind off other things, the darkness or whatever. So I enjoy that aspect of just being out there and chatting. And that takes a lot of the mental load off of what you actually need as you get later in the race.
Definitely.
Are there any practices or any things that you do in your daily life that you think has helped you with having that mindset of, I can do another 5 mile loop, I can do another yard, I can do a couple more of those mile loops in that last hour of the race? Is there anything that has helped you with that?
Yeah, I'm stubborn. I think that's honestly kind of it. Do you remember back when Fitbits launched, to track our steps?
Yep.
There are certain things that kind of get me where it's like, yeah, I have to do that, and I have to do that on a daily basis. The Fitbit was one of those. Like, it was so nerdy. Had it clipped into my belt. It was like, okay, I hit my 10,000 for the day. Okay, well, it's 9 o'clock at night. I'm getting ready for bed, but I'm, like 9,500 steps. I got to go walk those loops, to hit my 10,000. And I don't know how long that lasted for. That's kind of years past, but there are certain things, and running is one of them. It really is that stubbornness and commitment of, this is what I signed up for, so I am going to keep going. And it goes back to being fun too, though. I don't consider myself a particularly competitive. I'm not a competitive runner, but I'm competitive with myself and wanting to do the best that I can. For ultras, generally speaking, so for like a more traditional format, where you have you're completing a particular distance and there's a cutoff time, I will tend to, get my money's worth, and I'm close to the cutoff, and just enjoying my time out there, and, moving as quickly as I can, but for, whatever reason, just kind of slowing down. But then bringing back that of, talking to myself and be like, oh no, we can run now. Or I just find myself walking and be like, why am I walking? No, we can run. We can do that. And by we, I mean me, because I'm by myself, and just continuing to move forward. But on a daily basis, it's committing to my training plan, putting together that training plan, being like, well, I might be kind of tired today. Well, that means maybe I could go bike in the basement, and get in something for that day. Or I'll print off my training plan. That's as much as I'm on my computer, for work all day, and I have, electronic things. I really appreciate having a printed training schedule, and I can see that visual. I actually did this when I first started, when I was really, starting into marathons and half marathons. I would even have one that I had at work. So it was like in my cubicle. So I would have two versions. I have one at home and one in my cubicle, kind of a reminder of like what I'm going to go and do after the work day. So that visual representation. And I know I find it interesting how you mentioned earlier about that meditative piece of kind of repeating what you need. Because I don't practice meditation, or have a particular gratitude practice. It's just, I have an appreciation for running and the enjoyment of it. And in a given race, I'm just so happy to be out there. Like, I'm exhausted, but I'm still like, but I am just still finding the joy in what I get to do, in being out there and joking around. And it's just, I think that the stubbornness and kind of that joy is what's carrying me through to the next loop, to the next mile, to the next step of, well, I can do it. It's possible. It's what I signed up for. So let's go for it.
Yes, I love that. I absolutely love that. Shifting a little bit, I know you're involved in the BIPOC community. You're in the Twin Cities. How much influence has that community had on your running and your daily life?
Yeah, so I was going back to saying that I typically run by myself, and just like logistically it's easy, and timing wise, and I enjoy it, being able to do that. But a couple of years ago now, a friend who actually happens to live in our neighborhood, she has started up kind of this BIPOC outdoors in the Twin Cities. So there's a Facebook group, and people share events that are happening for the BIPOC community. And I've gone to a few different events, but no surprise here, the one that resonated with me is one that was walking and running focused. So it's moving while BIPOC, and we it started off as just a few of us meeting at a community center, and on Thursday nights, and there's often at least a couple people who are going to walk, a couple folks who are doing kind of a walk run, and then a few of us who are going to run. And it's just something to look forward to on Thursday nights. And it has grown into something that we're so supportive of one another. And we have, in addition to having a common interest in moving, of getting in some sort of movement of like, we've maybe had a long work week, or, if there's stresses in our life, in various ways, we get to go to this in a low pressure, supportive, kind of, I feel like chill, kind of overall kind of chill vibe, and just catching up with each other on a weekly basis and doing that, and getting in our walk or our run. And it has turned into, we have a WhatsApp group. So we get to, if somebody wants to go, and they're like, hey, is anyone interested in going for a run today? And it's just really turned into a a group of people who, have this common interest. There's some sort of like, we have this shared background and of cheering each other on, like literally going out and watching a couple of members running their first marathon or signing up for races together. And it's just, I think it kind of surprised me that it was a group that resonated so much. I've tried out different run groups, and they all have their merits, and there's, I think that many runners can find that group that is right for them, and that would be something too for a new runner. Of you can absolutely just run by yourself. You can run with a friend, and there also might be a group out there for you, and that's what I've found with this group. There's another group that launched in the past years called They Run Minnesota, and that is for non-binary and trans runners, and that has been wonderful to be a part of. So it's something where it's like this kind of inherent identity that you have, and then you combine that with this additional interest and being able to have kind of that level, I wouldn't say a level playing field because we all come in with different backgrounds and experiences, but there's that commonality and maybe ways that we're navigating life. We have this kind of maybe an understanding or an appreciation for that, and then being able to go and run together is amazing. And signing up for these races together and cheering each other on has been amazing.
I think that understanding and that appreciation and that commonality is so important. Mm-hmm. When you're looking for races to run, race organizations to support, have you seen that same level of support, or are there some race organizations that do a better job at supporting the community?
Yeah, so thinking about, there's can be an intersection of identifying as queer, identifying as non-binary, identifying as BIPOC, but there's also kind of separations there too, or a difference in what support might look like for those different communities. So I'd say from a non-binary perspective, it absolutely varies. For one, it can be a newer division that has been added to some races. So I have found that it definitely varies. Some race organizations, there's no mention, and it's a strong emphasis on there's a male division, a female division. Some races, they're like, yep, we'll have you can sign up as non-binary, but the awards are for men and women, or for the male division and the female division. And then there are other races where it's like, we have equal awards for all three, and we will celebrate each of those three divisions equally. So in the past couple of years, and again, I think being part of, and I think the BIPOC group factors into this too, being part of the They Run group, and just being part of a couple of local race organizations, so the Loppet Foundation and Twin Cities in Motion. Those are two, I love running their races, and those are two organizations that celebrate having that non-binary division and reach out to those communities. There's another local race that was their inaugural race this year, the Twilight Relays.
Oh,
and
yes.
Which was so fun. It was each person, it's teams of four, you each run a 5K loop. And our baton was a canister of noon, which I thought was very but that race director made a point of reaching out to these groups. So I actually had the opportunity to be on two different teams if I had wanted to, because they specifically reached out to our BIPOC group. They specifically reached out to our They Run group. And I felt like you could see that in the participants at this event. Like, oh, wow, look at all of these different groups that are showing up at this particular race versus maybe some other races. There's such value, I feel like, in those race directors, in those organizations, making a point of having it on their website of who we welcome and how we welcome you, and reaching out to those different communities. It can depend on the runner, but there's something to be said to like feel welcome. And I think that there's an argument of running is for everybody, but there are many ways that we could talk a whole other day about as to why that might not actually be the case in practice. But that can be tough to see if you're not part of those communities too. But with all of that said, I have such an appreciation for those organizations who are doing that work to invite people who may not, for whatever reason, don't necessarily feel welcome, or the race organizations who are making sure that their cutoffs are more generous so that more people can feel welcome, or like Twin Cities in Motion for their races, they have the Run Tourage. So they have volunteers who are also running the race. They're identified with shirts and hats. And their job is to go around and talk to various runners who might be more towards back of the pack to make sure that they're still doing well, and maybe they want to chat, maybe they want a run buddy. And that just makes it more welcoming for more people to join into these races. And I think that's such a beautiful product of running.
I agree. And so Twin Cities Marathon was your first marathon, correct?
Yes. Yep.
You ran at Twin Cities Marathon this past year, not this past weekend.
Exactly.
And you wore the Outside Safe Space tree. I was first introduced to this at our Brooks Running Hype Fest. We had Micah Meyer as a guest speaker. He spoke for, 2 hours maybe, and I just thought the entire concept of this tree was incredible. Can you talk a little bit more about this Outside Safe Space tree?
Yeah, so my introduction to it is probably I saw it on Instagram, and there was a queer outdoor prom earlier this year, and I think Micah was an organizer of that too. So of course I heard more about this tree. So the idea, and actually I can show it. I have one of the stickers too, my water bottle. And I think there's a patch you can buy. There's a pin, and I have the pin. And the idea is to showcase whether you identify as LGBTQ IA+, or you're an ally, and to have that visual representation. There is something so inviting about that. I feel that as a queer person. And I think that others, whether you identify, no matter how you identify, that there is something inherently just kind of welcoming and just approachable about that, generally speaking. That might not apply to everyone, but I feel like generally speaking, that can be the case. And so, it's that visual indicator. But the reason I actually went ahead and ordered that pin and that sticker is there's, again, going back to Instagram, there's a Run Try Mag. And this is a fantastic organization, online, kind of a digital organization, although I think they're going to have more of a physical presence next year and going and having meetups at different races.
They're doing so many things. It's incredible.
They're doing so many things. Jason, I think, just his mind is moving a mile a minute. But so Jason, the founder or co-founder of Run Try Mag, had reached out to me. And so we were talking, and so he, was a cisgender heterosexual male who, just for even his Instagram account, always has up the pride version of their logo, because his argument was, well, we don't need to take that down after Pride Month is over. Why not keep that up? Because then people can see that and say, oh, maybe this is an organization that would welcome me. And he said that he has his sweatshirt with his logo on there, and again, the Pride version. And he's had people who go up to him and, share an appreciation that he has that. And again, as an ally. And so I had the opportunity to chat with him, and kind of the conversations and some of the posts and stories that he shared. Like, oh, I should do that. I should have a little symbol to share out there. So this year I did I won an entry into the 5K, the Twin Cities Marathon Weekend 5K, and then someone had given me their 10-mile entry. I was like, oh, I've got to wear my Pride pin for those two races. And so that's just something that I'll want to continue definitely going forward. Because again, it's a small thing that I think can mean a lot, especially maybe for someone who maybe isn't ready to sign up for a non-binary division. They want to, they're curious about it, but they don't feel comfortable about that. Or you're, out for a hike and you don't really know how people might perceive you based on your presentation, but you see that pin, you're like, okay, there's someone who maybe can relate to me.
Yeah. I think about the trails. I think about just the conversations that you can have with others when they see that pin. I think it's going to be very valuable, and just that sign of you are welcome is just incredibly important. So I feel like we can talk forever, but I want to respect your time. But I have 2 questions that I always ask our guests. So my first one is, what advice do you have for runners who are hesitant to try out a backyard ultra?
To try a backyard ultra, I'd say look up a couple videos on YouTube. Maybe listen to a podcast or 2. This podcast to start with. And I think like what you were saying before, of if there's a backyard ultra near you and you could go do the course preview, go check that out. Or if you can check out maybe somebody's Strava file who has run that particular course before, and ask a buddy to go and run that course. Or maybe it's joining a local group run and kind of listening in on what other people are talking about, and seeing if maybe somebody has run that format. Or don't do any of that and just sign up for one and try it. There is no harm aside from the financial aspect. So of course that is a factor, but if that's not necessarily a factor and it is worth it to you that you could go and get in maybe a 4-mile run, then sign up for that race and you might be able to do a couple of loops if you've run trail before. I don't think you don't even have to have run a trail run before. Just try it. It's low pressure. Yes, there is this emphasis on going one more, of seeing how far you can go, but you don't have to do that. There are people there with so many different goals, all these different backgrounds. What you can or can't do is just as valuable as anyone else there. So it's give it a shot. It is likely, if you were thinking about it, you can probably complete that 4 miles. And then, yes, everyone's a DNF, but I really I don't know if this is true for all backyards, but I like that they document the distance that you completed. So, to me, it doesn't really feel like a DNF. It feels like this is the distance that I accomplished, on this day. So it's either researching or not researching and just trying it. Yeah.
There's always someone that is going to do one loop. Maybe it's their first trail run. Maybe they are crewing someone. That's very common for crew members to run a couple loops and then just crew for the rest of the time. And I love how everyone is celebrated. When you're done, some races have a bell that you ring or a horn that you blow, and everyone is supportive of whatever you have achieved. So I love that. Go into it flexible, with curiosity, with just going in with the flow, or dive into the research and see what you can do. And there's just so many different avenues that you can take when approaching the Backyard Ultra.
Exactly. And when you were talking about the crew point, the other way to experience it is volunteering too.
Yes.
I think that could be a very valuable way, which is something that I would like to do in thinking about future goals of a race format that I'm interested in, is probably volunteering, for one, to get an idea of what this is like.
Yeah, because you don't know what you don't know, right? If your goal is to run a Backyard Ultra, if your goal is to run a 100-miler and you've never done it before, that's everyone's first time if you've never done it before. You don't know what to expect, and volunteering is very approachable, and it's one of the best ways to just learn more about it.
Definitely.
So my second question is, and this can go multiple directions. This could be realistic, this could be funny, whatever direction you want to take it. But if you could only fuel with one source for your entire Backyard Ultra, what would you choose?
Oh, so the first thing that comes to mind is because it's what I constantly say when I'm in a race. Even when I was doing my first, my ultra birthday 30 miler in January, so it's barely above freezing, I was like, lemonade sounds really good right now. So like an actual lemonade. Yes, you can get like lemon lime flavor, like Tailwind or Scratch and all those, but like an actual lemonade sounds so good. They had the best lemonade at Javelina last year. There was one of the food trucks that was there. It was like they used, I don't know, some fancy water, like this reverse osmosis. I don't know what it was, but that lemonade was so good. So I don't know if it would be practical to actually get through a race on just liquid. But I feel like if I could only choose one thing, that's the first thing that comes to mind. But if I was thinking a little more practically, if we're thinking like food-wise, I really enjoyed having grapes at Elm Creek earlier.
This seems like last year. This year.
Yeah, it feels like last year. I'm like, we're approaching the end of the year, but earlier this year. So I went with green grapes. So it was just like a little bit of savory, or at least a little tangy as opposed to like so much sweet. And I know I'm kind of going off the rails on this question, but
I love it.
Such an important factor for backyard ultras and for ultras is the food component. Part of me would have said Nerd gummy clusters because they're so good, but honestly, it's what I use to like prepare or really after the race. I'm like, okay, I had all these Nerd gummy clusters that I never actually ended up eating because it kind of felt like maybe too much to like chew while on the run. I was like, let me just take a gel. Let me just drink some Tailwind. But after, I'm like, this is so good. I need to get in my calories post-race. Let me enjoy some candy.
Yeah. No, I love that. So I bought, because I feel like when it comes to races, I have all these ideas of things that I should cook and have prepared. And then you get down to the prep time and it's like, no, I'm just going to buy it. So I bought this half-gallon jug of lemonade for the Backyard Ultra that my husband and I did in August, and that hit the spot. It was hot that day, and it was just this burst of, I don't know, brightness, and it was refreshing. And I kind of wonder at Javelina, like Arizona lemons are so good. If they were using some Arizona lemons in their lemonade too.
I had no idea that was a thing. So that has to have been what it was.
Yes.
It was so good.
That's like one of the things that like my grandma's siblings they go south to Arizona in the winter, and they always bring back lemonade or lemons for cooking, for lemon pies, for whatever it is, because the flavor is absolutely incredible.
That sounds incredible. Wow.
Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for being on this podcast. Can you tell our listeners how to follow you?
Yeah, I'm most active on Instagram, and my Instagram handle is This Is How I Run. And the same thing I do like to write race recaps, particularly for longer races. And I have a WordPress blog, so thisishowirun.wordpress.com.
Awesome.
That's the URL. Yes. This Is How I Run.
Yep, I have it, and I'll put it in the show notes.
Perfect.
So I'll make sure that everyone can follow you and read those. But thank you again. This was an absolute blast. I feel like we could talk forever. But hopefully I'll just see you in a few months at Elm Creek, and Definitely. We can have a few conversations. I think I'm going to volunteer instead of running it, because I just want another perspective in April and be able to help crew or have conversations and help people out. So it should be fun. But
that's fun.
Yeah. Until next time, strive to go 1 more hour, 1 more mile, or 1 more step. Thanks for tuning in to 1 More Hour. If you enjoyed this episode, hit follow so you don't miss the next yard. And share it with a runner who loves pushing their limits. I'd love to hear your own stories of going 1 more. Connect with me on Instagram at the 1 More Hour Podcast. And if you could leave a quick review, it'll help more runners find the show and keep going when they want to stop. Until next time, just go 1 more hour.